Morning, Donald Trump became the first American president in history to be convicted of a crime.
One of those where were you when this happened kind of moments.
The breaking news, Donald Trump guilty in the so-called hush money criminal trial.
Diese Unentschlossenen jetzt vielleicht doch sich von Trump.
It's a stunning moment in American history.
medios y contestar las preguntas de la prensa.
트럼프 전 대통령이 어두운 얼굴로 법정을 걸어 나옵니다.
Business and politics have clearly taken Trump around the world, but it was regular New Yorkers in a Manhattan courtroom who brought him home to accountability, convicted on all counts. A kid who grew up in Queens, seeing his hometown paper report the news with a deliberately understated headline, Queens man convicted. Well, as we've told you, the nation continues to share the single legal fact of this guilty verdict.
We have a verdict in the criminal trial of Donald Trump.
We are looking at count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty.
This is everything that the prosecution asked for from a jury that, by all accounts, took this thing very, very seriously.
That New York jury did take it seriously. We've been in the courtroom along with our colleagues. No one's found any evidence to the contrary. This is the ultimate loss for a man who infamously hates to lose. It is also proof that on this one, the lies and denials failed. Consider this thought, quote, you can't con people, at least not for long. You can throw in a little hyperbole, but if you don't deliver the goods, people will eventually catch on. That warning about the limits of conning people is from The Art of the Deal itself. Here was Trump at the party in 1987 for that book, which helped launch his hype, his brand, and these lies to a much wider audience. And this was in a time before the internet and social media. The book really mattered. Now, here was Trump after his guilty verdict. Older, as we all are if we're lucky enough to stay alive, but also sadder, defeated, and perhaps in his own way learning that very lesson that he may not have believed when he said a variation of those words to his co-author on The Art of the Deal, one known more for writing than defendant Trump, now convicted felon Trump, the veteran journalist, author, and businessman Tony Schwartz, who did not know when he partnered on that book he was working with a future president or a future felon. Tony, we've had some conversations over the years. I'm thrilled to have you here tonight. Welcome back.
Thank you. I was looking at that quote, which is from The Art of the Deal, as you said, and thinking to myself, did he say that or did I make that up on his behalf?
Yeah, that's one of your life questions.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer, but I will say it's taken an awful long time to catch up with him, even in the courts. He's probably committed scores of felonies over the last 30, 35 years and gotten away with every single one. He hasn't in this case, but the jury is out, Ari, on whether whether we've really caught up with him finally.
People struggle to depart from patterns. That's why they're patterns. And I'm going to show you in a minute the pattern of him getting away with things. But now with him losing, how do you think he and the people around him are absorbing something that is a full and total loss with the legal possibility of, I'm not saying it's happening, but the possibility of jail time, which in my experience around the law, that focuses the mind of even the most powerful, even the billionaires, even the former heads of state. Jail's different.
Well, first of all, I have no doubt that there is, and one of the emotions Trump is feeling is terror. And the idea of being in a prison for 30 different reasons is unimaginable to him and horrifying. Second of all, he lives in a massive state of denial. And so all the energy now is around saying that this was, a setup, all the various things that he said. But I think he is sitting in a state that really tests whatever level of mental health he currently has.
Yeah, and that it is a type of stress and strain. I mean, he said in his bizarre press conference afterward, he said, other people would have stepped back by now. He's wired different. And I thought, that's one of those times where he's saying something that corresponds to reality.
Yeah, he's wired up is what he means. He's activated and he's crazed. And, if you look at the last month or even the last 2 months, the he's gone further and further out in terms of outrageousness, posting in a way that suggests he's aligned with Nazis. I mean, saying that he's going to get rid of the Constitution, then saying he's defending the Constitution when it serves him to say that. But yeah, I really do wonder. It's one of my biggest questions is over the next 4 months, as he's going more toward the election, in the face of all this, does he finally go too far? Now, we don't know whether the crime that he's now been convicted of meant that Americans think he's gone too far. In fact, we know that at least 45% of Americans don't. But it will be interesting to see, because I think he will say things that are more outrageous, more unacceptable. And the question will be, can he, as it's been for 8 years, can he finally break the pact with those who have voted for him?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I'm going to turn to what we've prepared for our viewers and you, which is this look at the history. I will say that people say things sometimes. They say, well, I can't believe this person gets away with it. Most crimes are unsolved. I don't say that to encourage criminality to the viewers or support anarchy, but that's actually the truth. Most crimes are unsolved. Now, very high-profile criminals, famous criminals, right? When Gotti was on the cover of magazines, it became a national priority. This cannot continue. But there are many small-time gangsters, batterers, violent people, abusers who are never caught because prosecution is not about crime. Sorry. It's about evidence. And if you have enough evidence on someone, you got them. And if you don't even bring the case. And this person who you work so closely with has been a master and an obsessive about avoiding evidence and the track record and the footprints his whole adult life, which is part of why what you're about to see happened, that when it came time to get the evidence, they didn't always have it.
No collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction. It is official, everybody.
Bob Mueller did not find chargeable collusion.
Ms. Collins, not guilty. Mr. McConnell, not guilty.
The president acquitted of abusing power and obstructing Congress.
Donald Trump tonight declared not guilty of the impeachment charge he incited insurrection at the Capitol.
The U.S. Supreme Court handing Donald Trump the gift of time.
After months of delays and closed-door hearings, the classified documents case against former President Donald Trump has been officially and indefinitely delayed.
I did my job. We did our job. Many voices out there. The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
Facts. And this one was different. And the alliances he had, the political relationships he developed, the Supreme Court, there's a lot of reasons in addition to the evidence thing I mentioned. But now this one is different. Do you see something different in D.A. Bragg and this battle that he lost, that Trump lost, unlike those?
I have a lot more humility than I had 8 years ago when he was running for president. And he has prevailed over rationality so many times that I don't know the answer. But I will say this, and this is really important. The only chance he has now is to destroy the system that made him, that led to his conviction. So he has to focus all his attention in order to survive on breaking down confidence in that system, in the system of, in the rule of law, in the way that a democracy operates, because without that, he is a guilty man. He's forever. So the amount of damage he can do in his attempt to save himself right now is almost incalculable. And it can only be realized if he's elected. But even if he's not elected, you know he is going to challenge the results. So we've got a lot of unknowns ahead of us. And this guy is not going down easily.
No, I think he is in a more desperate position going into this election than the last one. There's been much talk about the other trials that are delayed. They're delayed, not denied. He knows if he loses outright and can't find any other way to overcome that, that's how we have to talk nowadays in this country, that he's facing a bunch of other trials with a much higher risk of jail. I do want to show what he said in 2016, which reminds you why you know that being a felon is a bad thing in politics. He understood that then. He just didn't have the truth of that about his opponent, so he made it up. Take a look.
She shouldn't be allowed to run. We could very well have a sitting president under felony indictment and ultimately a criminal trial. It would grind government to a halt.
So what's interesting about Trump, and always has been, is that he projects onto his enemies all the things that are true about him. So what he was describing was, what he would like to have happen to Hillary. But the fact is that nothing he says is set in stone. It's applicable to that moment and how it will serve him. So that's what he was saying then. And his style is, as you know, is repetition. So he's going to repeat 10,000 times that this was a sham trial. And the question is, will democracy, will the rule of law hold up under the assault?